Hi all. In this video, we're going to talk about joining two tables using SQL left join in Python. So let's look at two sample data sets. We've got a sample data set of returns, right? Coca-Cola's returns in different periods. And then we have a sample data set of Coca-Cola's earnings announcement date, right? Which is, let's say, RDQ, and that's December 28th, 2022. And earnings surprise, right? They beat by 1%, or Pepsi beat by 0.5%, right? And so let's say we want to bring these two data sets together, right? And why would we want to bring these two data sets together? Well, so this is the return, right, on the 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. And this is the return for Pepsi on the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Well, if they release earnings, let's say they release earnings after the market closes on the 15th and after the market closes on the 28th. Then the first time the market will have a chance to respond to their earnings surprise is on the 16th in the case of Pepsi and on the 29th in the case of Coca-Cola. And so you could imagine we might want the 3-day return right after Coca-Cola, releases earnings on the 28th, and the 3-day return after Pepsi releases earnings on the 15th, right? And so that 3-day return would be the return on the 16th, the 17th, and 18th for Pepsi, and the return on the 29th, 30th, and 31st for Coke, right? Assuming they both release earnings after hours. These are the first days that the market has a chance to respond to Coke. These are the first days that the market has a chance to respond to Pepsi. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to bring these two tables together, right? And why would we want to bring these two tables together? Well, we might want to regress the 3-day return, right, for Coca-Cola on earnings surprise, right? So we might want to put these three returns together and then regress it on the earnings surprise. So let's look at how to do that, how to bring these tables together. So first of all, we're going to do, you'll recall, we need to establish SQL within our Python code. So from SQLite 3, import connect, and then specifically the CONN equals the connection, which is memory. So make sure you write this anytime you're doing your first SQL in your code. Okay, now what we want to do is, instead of just introducing one table to SQL, right, we need to introduce two. Why? Because we need to bring both in to the SQL command so we can left join them together. So the first two lines of our SQL code is basically write this CompuStat December 22 table to SQL. Okay, and now it's CompuStat December 22. It's in SQL. This is the connection, and if it exists, replace it. Right. So if we already have a table in SQL called CompuStat December 22, 2022, we want to replace it with this data. Okay. Now this would be this is our CompuStat data. This is typically our crisp data. So we're writing in the CompuStat data into SQL, and then we write the crisp data into SQL. So now in SQL we have two tables, crisp and CompuStat. These are two separate tables, and what we want to do is we want to join them together into one table. And so we're going to say query select distinct crisp December 22 company. So what we're doing is we're saying this is the left side, right? So what we're saying is this is going to be the data, and then we're adding this data to this data. So this will be the left side of our data, and then we're going to add in, these columns to this data set. And this is important, and the reason this is important is because when you left join, it keeps every row in the left data in the left table, right? And so then our resulting table is going to have all, 8 of these rows, right? And then 2 of the 8 rows are going to have earnings data, right? And specifically, it's going to be December 28th for Coke and December 15th for Pepsi. So we're going to have all 8 of these rows, and then 2 of the rows are going to have additional data here, okay? Additional data called RDQ, additional data called earnings surprise. And that's going to be the December 28th and December 15th. Now, if instead we had used this as our left side table and this as our right side table, then we would only end up with 2 rows, right? Because it would take Coca-Cola and would match in the return on this date, the December 28th. So we would have 2 rows, this row, and it would have a return date here. So they would have a return column right here. So this row and this row. But we don't want that, right? Because then we don't have the returns after, the 28th. We don't have the return on the 29th. We don't have the return on the 30th. We don't have the return on the 31st. And similarly for Pepsi, we won't have the return on the 16th. We won't have the return on the 17th. We won't have the return on the 18th. So that's why it's critical that we have the full eight, we have this table on the left-hand side. So, and then we merge in this table. So so our output has eight rows, and two of the rows have the earnings surprise data in it. All right, so let's see how to do that. So select distinct, crisp, and you'll see crisp 2022 company. That's basically saying the first variable we want is this column, company. The second column we want is date, right? It's actually called data date, but this should read crisp December 22 dot data date. So that's saying the second column we want is the crisp data date. And I should have written data date instead of date here. The third column we want is crisp December 2022 dot return, right? So that's pulling in this column, and so instead of RET, I should have written out return. But so what we did is we said, okay, we want this column, we want this column, and we want this column. Okay, and now what do we want to add to it? Okay, we want to add CompuStat RDQ data. So we want to add um, this column to these three, and in addition we want to add the earnings price. So we want to add this column too. So we're going to have this column, this column, this column, this column, and this column, right? So we'll have 5 columns in our data and 8 rows. From, and this is crisp December 2022. Whatever you put in the from section of your code that's the left-hand side of your table. That's the left table, right? So we're saying from, so this is going to be our left side table, and then left join, and whatever you put here after left join, that's your right side table. So we're saying from this, left join this. So this is our left table, this is our right table. And then we say on, so basically what are we matching these two tables on? Well, first we're going to match it on company, right? Coca-Cola to Coca-Cola and Pepsi to Pepsi. And then we're going to match it not just on company name, but we also have to match it on the date, right? So we want this data date to equal RDQ. So specifically, like we want December 28th, 2019, or I'm sorry, we want, I messed up. This should all read 2022, my bad. Instead of being 2021, 2020, 2019, this should be 2022, 2022, and 2022, right? Because we want the days after the earnings announcement. So this should equal December 28th, 2022, which is equal to RDQ. So December 28th, 2022. And then so we basically say we want to match on company, and we want the date to equal RDQ. And so we want this this column to equal this column. And then so finally we have all that, and then we say crisp CompuStat merged, and then we want to read this from SQL back into pandas, right? Once we have all the data merged, we want to do read pandas. We want to read SQL into pandas. So pd.read SQL query connect, and then this is going to be our crisp and CompuStat data merge for December 2022, and then we want to print out this crisp CompuStat December 2022 merge.head 10. Okay, so that gives us the 10 rows, the top 10 rows of our merge data. And so what is the new data going to look like? It's going to look like this, except with my mistake, this should be 2022, 2022, 2022. So it's going to read, you're going to have eight rows, and right, which is all 3 columns from the left join data crisp. And then we're going to have 2 columns from CompuStat, right? This RDQ, which is the date of the earnings announcement, and the earnings surprise. But it's only going to be, the values are only going to be filled in for 2 rows, and that's where this date equals this date, and the company name from CompuStat equals the company name from Coke, the company name from Crisp. So then what we have is we have all this. We end up with this, and then what we can do in the future is we can then take these returns, compound them, right? So let's say we want to know the 3-day return after this 1% earnings surprise. we can compound this return with this return with this return by basically multiplying them together, um, or 1 plus, and then multiply them together, and then subtract off 1. And that'll give us the 3-day return for, following Coca-Cola's earning announcement. And then similarly, we can multiply these three together to get Pepsi's 3-day return following the Pepsi earnings surprise. Anyway, so I hope that was helpful. This is a critical tool, which is left join, CompuStat, and Chris bring the two tables together. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video, which is where we run regressions.